The Florida Everglades cover more than 1.5 million acres of sawgrass prairie, cypress swamp, and mangrove forest. It is one of the largest and most biologically diverse wilderness areas in the United States. Somewhere inside it, something has been watching. For over a century, people seen that something. Their accounts share the same details, delivered independently across decades, a creature standing between 6 and 9 feet tall. Covered in dark, shaggy fur ranging from brown to black, sometimes reddish, moving on 2 legs through terrain that would swallow most humans whole, and always, without exception, preceded or followed by a smell so overwhelmingly foul that witnesses reach for the same description every time. Something between rotten eggs and skunk spray, a smell that hits the back of the throat and stays there. The locals call it the skunk ape. It goes by other names as well: the swamp ape, the stink ape, the swamp sasquatch. In the small town of Barden in Putnam County, residents have their own version they call the Barden booger. In cryptozoology circles, it is sometimes called the Myakka ape, a reference to the river and state park that has produced some of the most compelling evidence ever gathered. Whatever name you prefer, the creature behind the stories is consistent in its physical description, its behavior, and its refusal to be definitively caught. This creature has been seen across nearly every county in Florida, beginning from documented reports in 1955 through to the present day. There are hundreds of individual accounts, with witnesses ranging from children to police officers to fire chiefs. Before a single European settler walked through Florida's interior, the indigenous people of the region were already living alongside something strange. Cryptozoologists have long pointed to oral traditions amongst the native cultures as early documentation of the skunk ape. The creature referenced in those traditions carries the name Esti-Jap-Jackie. Depending on the translation, the name means either hairy giant or tall man, with some versions rendering it as cannibal giant. The creature described in these traditions is large, elusive, powerful, and associated with the deep wilderness. And some senior tribal chiefs have described this creature as not just a physical being, but also as a spirit. The boundary between the physical and the spiritual runs through almost every indigenous account ever collected on this subject. The earliest written account that researchers have identified comes from 1818. A newspaper in what is now Apalachicola, Florida, reported an incident in which a man-sized monkey had been spotted raiding food stores and stalking fishermen camped along a riverside. More than a century later, in 1942, a driver on a rural Florida dirt road reported that a large, hairy, ape-like creature leaped onto the running board of his moving vehicle. It pounded on the window glass. Then it dropped off and vanished into the tree line. The following decades brought scattered reports from hunters, farmers, and rural residents. But the real wave of sightings came in the 1950s, 1960s, and especially the 1970s. This was the era when the skunk ape solidified into a distinct regional legend, when the reports became frequent enough and detailed enough that the creature earned its name and its reputation. In 1957, 2 hunters operating in the Everglades reported that a gigantic, foul-smelling ape had invaded their campsite during the night. Their story spread through the region. It was one of the first accounts to specifically attach the overwhelming odor to the creature, and from there, the name began to take hold. The smell became the defining characteristic that separated this creature from generic Bigfoot sightings elsewhere in the country. By the early 1970s, reports were coming in regularly from across southern Florida. In 1973, a family reported seeing a large ape-like creature chase their child off a tricycle. The following year, another family claimed they had struck a creature with their car on a rural road. When they examined the vehicle afterward, they found hair embedded in the front fender, hair that did not match any animal they could identify. In the fall of 1974, the situation intensified dramatically. Numerous reports were filed with law enforcement in Dade County, Florida, describing a large, bipedal, foul-smelling creature seen in suburban neighborhoods and along the edges of swampland. Local police were logging case after case from different parts of the county, from people with no connection to each other. Witnesses in that period described the creature as standing upright, moving on 2 legs, and running at speeds that unsettled those who observed it. The smell, they said, arrived before the creature did. It lingered long after it was gone. One of the most striking cluster sightings in the creature's history occurred in 1997. A full tour bus carrying multiple passengers was traveling through the Everglades when a large, reddish-haired, bipedal creature reportedly charged out of the swamp and crossed the road directly in front of them. The numerous witnesses on the bus estimated the creature at 7 feet tall. That same year, Vince Doer, the chief of the Ochope Fire Control District, reported a sighting. Doer was driving in the area when he observed a creature cross the road in front of his vehicle. He stopped his car and photographed it. Within 2 weeks of Doerr's reported sighting, more than 50 people had filed accounts of hairy creature encounters within the boundaries of the Big Cypress National Preserve. Dave Shealy had his first skunk ape encounter as a child, around 10 years old near his family's property in Ochapi. He saw it at a distance, catching only a glimpse after his brother picked him up to see over the vegetation. That early sighting determined the direction of his life. Shealy became the most prominent dedicated researcher of the skunk ape in the state of Florida, claiming multiple subsequent sightings over the decades that followed. Shealy built the Skunk Ape Research Headquarters in Ochapi, tucked into the swampland of the Big Cypress area. The facility houses a collection of photographs, plaster casts of alleged footprints, and other physical artifacts. One of the most discussed pieces of his collection is a cast of a four-toed footprint he claims was found directly adjacent to his hunting camp. In July 2000, Shealy released video footage he claimed to have captured in the swamp near his headquarters. The footage shows a dark, upright figure moving through the swamp vegetation before breaking into a run. Shealy has argued that the speed the figure moves at would be impossible for a human being to sustain through that terrain. Critics disagree. The footage is blurry, shot at a distance, and has been analyzed extensively without a definitive conclusion. It remains one of the more discussed pieces of skunk ape video evidence, and like most evidence in this field, it has not offered a definitive answer. The most famous and most analyzed visual evidence in the entire history of the skunk ape came not from a researcher but from an anonymous member of the public. In December of the year 2000, the Sarasota County Sheriff's Department received an unusual piece of mail. It contained a handwritten letter and 2 photographs. The letter was written by a woman who explained that a large creature had been coming to her backyard for 3 consecutive nights. It had been stealing apples from a basket on her back porch. She believed it was an escaped orangutan. Her husband agreed with that assessment. She had photographed it on one of its visits. The photographs showed a large, reddish-brown, ape-like figure crouching in dense palmetto vegetation at the edge of a yard. The creature appears to be looking directly at the camera. Its eyes reflect the light and it conveys aggression by baring its teeth. The woman was never identified. She never came forward publicly, and attempts to locate her over the years produced nothing. The photographs were taken near the Myakka River in Sarasota County, which is how they came to be known as the Myakka skunk ape photos. The images circulated quickly through the cryptozoology community and eventually reached mainstream media, generating significant public attention. Analysts who examined the photographs noted several things. The creature in the images is large relative to the surrounding vegetation. The musculature visible in the arms and shoulders is substantial. The fur is reddish-brown and appears coarse. Skeptics pointed to the orangutan theory the woman herself offered, suggesting the animal in the photos could be an escaped or released exotic pet. Florida has had well-documented problems with exotic animal releases, and an orangutan living loose in Sarasota County swampland can't be considered impossible. However, no missing orangutan was ever reported in that area, and no such animal was ever recovered. The photos remain unexplained. On January 25, 2015, Matthew McCamey was canoeing through the swamp at Lettuce Lake Park in Tampa. Lettuce Lake is a 240-acre park on the Hillsborough River, thick with cypress trees and heavy swamp vegetation. McCamey spotted something he initially believed was a bear. He began filming. As he watched the footage later and showed it to others, a different picture emerged. The figure in the Lettuce Lake footage is large and dark. It moves upright through the water and thick vegetation with what McCamey described as long, swinging arms. It appears to navigate terrain that would significantly impede a human being. Most print casts show 5 toes, though 3- and 4-toed prints appear in a smaller number of reports. The toes dig into soft ground with unusual depth, consistent with a creature carrying substantial weight. The smell is the detail that almost every witness returns to. Most describe it as sulfurous, rotten, and organic. Some compare it to a combination of skunk spray and decomposing organic matter. Others describe a wet, filthy animal smell, similar to a dog that has been rolling in decay. One witness from the 1970s described it specifically as a high odor that washed over the area even after the creature had moved away. The smell appears to linger at encounter sites, which is a detail that is difficult to manufacture as part of a hoax. The sounds associated with skunk ape encounters vary. Witnesses have reported a wide range of vocalizations, including hoots, high-pitched wails, whistles, and screams. The creature has been described in multiple accounts as aggressive toward dogs. Several accounts note that dogs refuse to approach areas where the creature has recently been present, which is consistent with the behavior of dogs detecting an overwhelming animal scent. Skeptical investigators have identified Florida black bears, particularly bears suffering from mange, as the most likely explanation for many reported sightings. A bear with severe mange loses most of its fur and develops an unusual shambling gait that can, at a distance and under certain lighting conditions, appear bipedal. Investigator Joe Nickel made this specific argument in analysis of reported Florida encounters. Critics of that explanation point out that witnesses in the most detailed accounts were not observing creatures at extreme distance under poor conditions. Police officers, fire chiefs, and tour operators reported their encounters in daylight and at close enough range to make extended observation. Most print casts show 5 toes, though 3- and 4-toed prints appear in a smaller number of reports. The toes dig into soft ground with unusual depth, consistent with a creature carrying substantial weight. The smell is the detail that almost every witness returns to. Most describe it as sulfurous, rotten, and organic. Some compare it to a combination of skunk spray and decomposing organic matter. Others describe a wet, filthy animal smell, similar to a dog that has been rolling in decay. One witness from the 1970s described it specifically as a high odor that washed over the area even after the creature had moved away. The smell appears to linger at encounter sites, which is a detail that is difficult to manufacture as part of a hoax. The sounds associated with skunk ape encounters vary. Witnesses have reported a wide range of vocalizations, including hoots, high-pitched wails, whistles, and screams. The creature has been described in multiple accounts as aggressive toward dogs. Several accounts note that dogs refuse to approach areas where the creature has recently been present, which is consistent with the behavior of dogs detecting an overwhelming animal scent. Skeptical investigators have identified Florida black bears, particularly bears suffering from mange, as the most likely explanation for many reported sightings. A bear with severe mange loses most of its fur and develops an unusual shambling gait that can, at a distance and under certain lighting conditions, appear bipedal. Investigator Joe Nickel made this specific argument in analysis of reported Florida encounters. Critics of that explanation point out that witnesses in the most detailed accounts were not observing creatures at extreme distance under poor conditions. Police officers, fire chiefs, and tour operators reported their encounters in daylight and at close enough range to make extended observation. A mangy black bear, they argue, does not move on 2 legs for sustained periods, does not reach 7 feet in height, and does not carry the weight visible in some of the photographs. The question of a relict primate species existing in Florida has been raised by some cryptozoologists, though it faces serious biological obstacles. No non-human primate is native to the United States or Canada. The fossil record does not support the survival of any large primate species on the North American continent into the modern era. For a breeding population of a large bipedal primate to survive in Florida, it would require a food source, a sufficient number of individuals to maintain genetic viability, and it would almost certainly have left behind skeletal remains at some point across the many decades of reported sightings. None of that evidence has appeared, and yet the sightings continue. Florida is unusual terrain for a creature of this kind. It is not a sparsely populated wilderness state in the way that the Pacific Northwest is. It has a large and growing population. Its major urban centers are not far from some of the most ecologically impenetrable swampland in North America. The Everglades offer a habitat that is deep, layered, and in places genuinely inaccessible. The Big Cypress National Preserve alone covers more than 700,000 acres of cypress swamp, hardwood hammocks, and freshwater sloughs. People go missing in the Everglades. Search and rescue operations in the interior are complicated by terrain that resists movement at every step. If something wanted to remain unseen in Florida, the Everglades would give it a fair chance. Florida loses roughly 240,000 acres of natural land to development each year. Habitats that once extended for dozens of miles into undisturbed wilderness are being fragmented by roads, housing developments, agricultural expansion, and commercial construction. Whatever the skunk ape is, it occupies exactly the kind of habitat that is under the most sustained pressure in the state. The Myakka sightings coincided with a period during the early 2000s when development was actively encroaching on the edges of Myakka State Park. It could well be that the expansion of human urban areas are pushing the skunk ape more and more in front of human eyes. The swamps of the Everglades do not give up their secrets easily. The swamp absorbs what enters it. Sunlight barely reaches the floor in the deepest cypress stands. Sound moves strangely through the thick vegetation. The water hides everything beneath its dark surface. Animals that biologists believed were extinct or absent from Florida have been rediscovered in the Everglades in modern times. The American crocodile was thought to be functionally gone from the state before a stable population was confirmed surviving in the southern reaches of the park. The Florida panther, declared nearly extinct, persists in the Big Cypress wilderness. The ecosystem has proven capable of concealing large animals for extended periods even from trained researchers. Whatever the skunk ape is, it appears in no hurry to introduce itself on anyone's terms but its own. Subscribe to Paranormal Depths for the strangest and most compelling cases from around the world.